Good morning, live from ZTN studios in Harare, Zimbabwe. Our discussion this morning, International Anti-Corruption Day, Protecting Whistleblowers. Hello, I'm your host, Andy Hodges. This broadcast is brought to you by ZIMBABWE's TV network, ZTN, and our partners, Transparency International Zimbabwe, TIZ. Now, should you have any comments or views on our program this morning, please contact us via our Facebook page, ZIMBABWE's TV network, or via our Twitter handle @ZTN News. According to United Nations, attitudes on corruption are changing. As recently as 10 years ago, corruption was only whispered about. Today, there are signs of growing intolerance towards corruption, and more politicians and chief executives are being tried and convicted. The UN General Assembly declared the 9th of December as International Anti-Corruption Day to be observed annually. The objective of this day is to create awareness about the negative effects of corruption and the need to prevent and fight it. Now, joining us in the studio this morning to discuss International Anti-Corruption Day Protecting Whistleblowers, our Commissioner Jessie Majome, she's from the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission, ZAC. Ngobani Shabangu, Research Officer from Transparency International Zimbabwe, TIZ. And Priscilla Misharabwi Mushonga, Chairperson of Zimbabwe's Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Primary and Secondary Education and Chairperson of UPNAC Zimbabwe. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Now, in our first segment, we asked our guest, what is the state of corruption in Zimbabwe? And does Zimbabwe have whistleblower protection? Jessie, what does the International Anti-Corruption Day actually mean for Zimbabwe?
Thank you, Andy. The International Anti-Corruption Day for Zimbabwe means that it's an opportunity for us as a country to recommit ourselves to the struggle to fight corruption, at the end of corruption. It means that it's a time for us to step back and reflect on our consciences and actually individually say, even for us here, what am I doing today? What am I doing against corruption? And so it's an opportunity for us to reflect and evaluate our efforts to find out whether we're doing enough, whether we can do better or do things differently. But more importantly, it allows us to focus very practically and helpfully, so to focus on a particular theme. And such as this year in Zimbabwe, our theme for this year is that corruption begets corruption and fosters a culture of impunity. And in that, so we are therefore encouraging and blowing the trumpet for whistleblowing. That if corruption begets corruption, let's do something to stop it. Let's call it out, let's report, let's blow the whistle so that we stop it, so that it doesn't breed more corruption and it doesn't continue to foster the very ugly child of impunity.
You made an interesting comment there, because it is about individuals, isn't it? I think a lot of people look at corruption as out there or somebody else is doing it, and then they still practice corrupt practices, you know, wherever they are in Zimbabwe. And you're right, each of us needs to look and say, what can we do against the fight against corruption? Ngobani, in your opinion, what is the state of corruption in Zimbabwe? Is Zimbabwe as corrupt as some commentators allege? And what are some of the corruption types that you have seen as TIZ recurring in some of the communities you work in?
Thank you very much, Andy. The extent of corruption in Zimbabwe, evidently, there is substantial evidence to show that it has grown. And it actually cuts across all sectors, talk of the public and the private sector. While most people might be thinking, or might be especially blowing a lot of horn on the public sector corruption, there is evidence that it actually has grown, and there's a need for us to collectively respond to it. In terms of the types of corruption that we usually face, the most common one which people comment on or realize has been bribery. But of recent, you know, you also talk of fraud and so forth. But of recent, there is also a debate on also how corruption affects women and men differently. We talk of sextortion, for example, almost in every sector, informal sector, public sector, and so forth. So corruption has been endemic, and evidently it is becoming a culture in terms of most business transactions that are occurring in this country.
I want to talk about that culture later on in the program and how we can try and change that. Priscilla, let's move on to whistleblower protection, because that's equally important in the fight against corruption. Now, of course, I suppose a basic question is, what is a whistleblower? That's number one. And also, do we as a country have a policy or framework for whistleblower protection? And why is it so important?
Well, yeah, thank you very much. But I was also going to start that it's interesting that we are celebrating or commemorating the Anti-Corruption Day at a time that we are also dealing with 16 days of activism. And I'm glad that he raised the issue that it's the time to begin to appreciate, like Jesse has said, how it impacts on you as an individual, but how it impacts on women, disappropriation. So it's a time for us to look at that. But just to your point, a whistleblower is basically somebody who is able to say there is something that is going on. Please look out for it. And it's somebody who we should protect, because those people are the ones that are either in a system, working in an organization, or are dealing with a power structure or a powerful individual who they can't deal with and face and go and report in the normal processes. So they have to use a system that protects them. This is why you can't talk about whistleblowing without talking about the protection of the whistleblower.
Jesse, let's continue on that theme. Your comment on why whistleblower would be important in Zimbabwe's context. And can you be specific about the strides we have made as a country, Zimbabwe as well? I think this is a critical point. The strides we've made in fighting corruption, because corruption cases seem to be popping up almost every day in different newspapers, and it appears it's now sort of really out there. But no one is really seeing some of the effects. Maybe those two questions: how important is whistleblower protection, and also specifically how have we been doing in our fight against corruption?
All right. Allow me to start with the latter, with the second question. As Zimbabwe, in terms of the fight against corruption, we have made strides. That started, I suppose, many years back, when also the international community was starting to rally around and try and use like an international instrument to fight corruption, and specifically the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, which Zimbabwe ratified and became a party to. So from then Zimbabwe also then ratified the African Union the protocol, the Charter Against Corruption, and then also the SADC Protocol Against Corruption. But so you'll see that Zimbabwe passed a Prevention of Corruption Act just after, it's almost coinciding with the time that Zimbabwe was also getting to be party to the United Nations Convention. So we have a Prevention of Corruption Act that is now fairly old, that established an anti-corruption commission that was statutory, but that was therefore appointed by the state president. It was really an executive commission, but that was a start. But eventually we've, I suppose, graduated, and eventually in 2013, the Constitution made sure that the Anti-Corruption Commission is an independent commission. That while it's not in the chapter on independent commissions, it is, the Constitution provides that it enjoys the same, I suppose, rights, the same protection at law as all those under other independent commissions. So that is important. And then also, I think there are also quite a lot of things. What I think is, what I'll say, I think that is most important, that I think we must be proud of a nation, is that finally we now have, for the first time, a national anti-corruption strategy. The efforts that were going on were there, but they were not coordinated. They were
I'll talk about that. I'm going to ask you about that a bit later on, because it's an important point on its own.
Yeah. So that allows us to have a more coordinated effort in terms of doing two things about corruption. One, seeking to hold those who are corrupt to account, using the law, by getting them prosecuted in terms of the criminal law, as well as now asset recovery. So these are the things that we have been doing. And I'm saying, and asset recovery is more or less like a new baby on the Zimbabwe anti-corruption scene. It has not been done very much. So the commission, the Anti-Corruption Commission that is there now, has made it a priority.
But I see you've made, I mean, well, I won't say made a lot of money from it, but you've seized quite a lot of assets. I think the last number I saw was quite huge. It was over $100 million or something like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're making very good strides, and we're actually hoping, actually last week, about 2 weeks, in the last 2 weeks, we've had about 3 matters that there was passed, and we're glad that Honorable Priscilla is here, and the colleagues in Parliament amended the Money Laundering and Proceeds of Crime Act to allow a permanent feature in our law of what are called undisclosed wealth orders that allow people who have some very mysterious and some might say miraculous wealth that cannot be readily ascertainable to be made to account and explain how they got that wealth.
So you're
and
saying,
if
watch
they-
out now. If you have unexplained wealth, Zach is coming for you.
It's coming for you. We will take you to the High Court through the National Prosecuting Authority, though.
Of course.
Make an application for the court to order that you explain how you got that wealth. If you fail to explain it by, like in earthly and concrete ways, the court will order that property be seized. So we've got presently about 3 matters that we're expecting to get judgments on, and we hope they are
Let's get to whistleblower very briefly. Is it important?
Very, absolutely important. As Priscilla was saying, that is that corruption causes a lot of uncertainty. In that there are certain people who would have power, a lot of power over others, and if they commit corruption, they get away with it because because maybe it's so rampant and that's the way it goes. But to have a person report it, a lot of people will be rightly worried and afraid that repercussions will be visited upon them. They could be in the employment arena, or even physically. People can actually be taken out because of that, and it can also be so. Whistleblower protection is important because it gives protection to whistleblowers so that they can have the confidence to step forward and give information that will be helpful for catching the people corrupt, but also so it's important that they can do it anonymously. But we don't have that good framework, rather, in Zimbabwe.
We'll get to that, because I know there is some lay law which is coming up, but we'll talk about that in the next segment. Priscilla, we've heard about this corruption and the way that all of us should work. So, I mean, there's many civil society organizations. They look at corruption. They look at all different aspects of it. Transparency International, of course, is the leader in terms of highlighting corruption in Zimbabwe. So, what role should civil society play in the fight against corruption?
Well, my favorite one of late is civic society have to start with themselves. Charity begins at home. So one of the things that I'm talking to civic society every other day is that if you are going to be in this struggle, you yourself have to make sure that you are not corrupt. And unfortunately, we are getting to hear a lot of corruption that is taking place within civic society, in aid organizations. And so that's the start point, which is what we have done as Parliament. We have said anyone who is in Parliament, anyone who becomes part of APNAC, like you indicated, you have to have declared your assets. You have to explain the wealth that you have, even without being asked by ZAC or NPA to do so. But civic society, I think, also need to move towards beginning to change the culture, a discussion around prevention. Yes, prosecution is important. Yes, conviction is important. But I think more importantly is to make sure that our people begin to understand that this Mbingalo business, Mbinga, is not a way of having life. We have young people who actually think that getting resources, getting money, flashing cars without working hard is a way of life. So civic society, in their working within the context of their communities, and I hope you're talking about civil society as including the churches also, really should begin to have this discussion so that there is a mental change, a mindset to saying hard work pays. At the moment, that's not what our people and generally the younger generation believe in.
Kobani, we're going for a quick break, but I will come to you to comment on that and also talk about our improved rankings, I believe, on the Corruption Perceptions Index. It's time for us to take a short breather. If you have any comments or views on our program this morning, please contact us via our Facebook page, ZimPapers TV Network, or via our Twitter handle @ZTN News. You're watching International Anti-Corruption Day, protecting whistleblowers. This broadcast is brought to you by ZimPapers TV Network, ZTN, and our partners, Transparency International Zimbabwe, TIZ. Now, in our next segment, we interrogate further the need for whistleblower protection and ask, is the new national anti-corruption strategy already being implemented? And are communities in Zimbabwe being sensitized about corruption, and are they willing to stop corrupt practices? What are they actually saying? Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching This Morning, International Anti-Corruption Day, Protecting Whistleblowers. This broadcast is brought to you by ZIMBABWE's TV network, ZTN, and our partners, Transparency International Zimbabwe, TIZ. Now, as I said before, if you have any comments or views on our program this morning, please contact us via our Facebook page, ZIMBABWE's TV network, or via our Twitter handle, @ZTN News. And Gobani, before the breather, I wanted you to comment because I think it was quite a critical point that Priscilla made about when I asked about civil society organizations, she pointed out NGOs should look at their own houses first. You know, the old adage, don't throw the first stone in a glass house. So that's my first question, your comment on that. And also as well, it appears that Zimbabwe is improving on the rankings with regards to Corruption Perception Index, CPI, which of course TIZ is the major publisher of that. In 2019, we're 158 out of 180. So how are we doing in that? Are we improving? One of the reasons, and also the comment on the NGOs looking at themselves. Okay,
let me start with the second question. I think when we're analyzing the CPI score, we shouldn't focus a lot on the rankings. For example, 180, 164 out of 180. Our focus should be on this score, which is from 0 to 100. Zimbabwe it is a slight improvement from 22 to 24, and then obviously people will say yes, this is progressive and it means we are doing something right, but the increase is somehow insignificant. Because if you rank Zimbabwe in relation to other regional countries, we still are far below the regional average. So that means there's a lot of things that we need to do. And what Commissioner pointed out, for example, maybe she will explain that in some instances you find that there was an uncoordinated approach towards responding to corruption. Perhaps now with the anti-corruption strategy, then we might see some a strategic approach to responding to corruption. Perhaps maybe the score might improve. So basically, yes, we have improved, but it's still insignificant.
Still more to be done.
Yes, there's still more to be done.
I'll talk about the NGOs issue because this is an interesting point.
Okay, I think Honorable is quite right. There might be some cases of corruption within the NGO sector, not only in the NGO sector, but
in the private sector. I
yes,
mean, people forget this. White collar corruption is just as bad than public sector and NGO.
Yes. And she rightly points out that there should be some ethics. The NGO sector needs to have its own ethics. They need to improve their systems. They need to be very much accountable, not only to themselves, but also to their funding partners as well. Right. And that actually creates a good intervention. If people that are making recommendations to the government are somehow clean, then it might help.
That's great. And Priscilla, you can comment on that, but let me also ask you this question. Still looking back at whistleblower protection, what are the challenges with the non-availability or absence of whistleblower protection in Zimbabwe? In your opinion, again, is there political will to enact and implement whistleblower protection in Zimbabwe? Because it's been spoken about for a long time now. Can we learn from other countries' best practices? I mean, and you can also comment, of course.
Okay, I wanted to say to him, it would be good if NGOs did do a declaration of assets. I would be very happy if you did a voluntary declaration of assets. Because for some of you, we are seeing you building big mansions, acquiring things that you have not had before. So really a voluntary declaration of assets would be something that some of us would
I think what we'll do is that hopefully in a future program we can get some of the NGOs in, because I know Transparency definitely are against corruption. So let's not go from Mobani here. Let's get the NGOs to come and answer themselves. But let's get back to that question about whistleblower challenges.
The whistleblower legislation is critical. It's important. We were disappointed, though, that when the president came for the SONA, it was left out. But that doesn't mean that we can't push for it. We understand that ZAC has a way bill, they have a shadow bill that we as APNAC are going to support. And like you rightly say, we are learning from other countries, because it has to go beyond just creating a framework for people to report, but it is also for allowing for the protection of those that do come out. And I'm glad Jesse did speak to the issues that it's just not a threat to somebody losing their job, but it also can be a threat to somebody's life. So just like we see it in other countries where at some stage, if it is so bad, you may have to actually move the person from the country or from the space that they are into some safe house, some safe place somewhere. So we really have to have lessons learned, because some of the times the monies we are talking about are lots. I can just give you a quick example. I know I don't have time. When I was flying at one stage and coming from Dubai, you know, the steward person came to me and said, I've reported this many times. I want to tell you that there are people that are smuggling gold all the time. And I raised it with Zach. And 1 year later, we found out what is going on. So in every space, there are people that are able to speak. But when I invited him to come and say, okay, can I actually take you so that, because you know who these people are, he said, oh, no, I still want my job.
I mean, look, following that line of thought, before I move on and very briefly, I mean, I think the issue, I'm not sure, maybe Jesse can come in here, is that if you're a whistleblower, you do need to come with proof and facts. You can't just say, oh, Andy's corrupt or Priscilla's corrupt or so forth. You need to really come properly armed. Otherwise, of course, what does Zach investigating? They can't investigate hearsay. Very briefly, I mean, is that the true state?
It is true, but we at ZAC don't want that to discourage people from giving us information that might not be complete.
Okay.
All we require is the person who is whistleblowing to be themselves certain and sure that they have actually seen that there is corruption being committed. We don't expect them to bring us all the evidence, because that's now our job.
Okay.
And the police is to go and investigate. We
so
want them to give us
if you're a whistleblower,
leads.
you see corruption, report it, even if you don't have all the facts. I think that's a critical
we
point.
Want very leads that we can actually work with.
And that are true. Before I get back to Jesse to ask a question, Priscilla, the issue of Parliament, I mean, you just said it now, and I just want to reiterate this. Will Parliament be fighting and pushing for the Whistleblower Protection Act to come into law as soon as possible? Because it's been now, I think it's been over 2 years we've been discussing this.
No, definitely. And part of what Jesse and me are going to be doing just after this program is to talk about having a meeting with the Attorney General, because what the shadow bill that they had put up with him, we still need to have a discussion over it and set up timelines. We wanted, the Speaker of Parliament last week actually said to APNAC, I'm giving you a deadline of March.
Okay.
So we need to deliver on the Whistleblower Act.
Jesse, I think then let me put the two questions in. I think Priscilla answered some of it, but obviously your label is in place. I know you've been working on it as ZAC for a while. Maybe you could give us a quick update on where we stand on that briefly. And also, let's get to your national anti-corruption strategy, because it was recently launched. So have you started implementing it yet? Maybe you can also briefly highlight some of the key top-level items it contains.
Hey, sure. We are excited, and I should say this because we are, about the National Anti-Corruption Strategy, and it's already starting to be in place, to be implemented, because it was launched in July. And I must say that it's important that we remember that this strategy wasn't just crafted by ZAC in some dark room somewhere. It came out of a participatory process, a national participatory process whereby we were doing this on behalf of the state, of the government, where we led the process, where we had expertise that went around and around the country, and it has 6 pillars, thematic areas, that also reflects the cross-section of Zimbabwean society in terms of participation, the public sector, business, civil society, and so on and so on. So what the National Anti-Corruption Strategy did is that in order for it to actually be implemented, it set up a national steering committee that is chaired by the chairperson of the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission. But then it also has more importantly, subcommittees that are tasked with these particular themes, or pillars, as I should call it. So the first one is the first pillar that the anti-corruption strategy works with is that of empowering citizens, so that they are aware of their rights and responsibilities that are necessary in fighting corruption. Because, like you said earlier, Andy, you more or less lamented at how sometimes people think that, oh, corruption is something that's done there, or that's done by the politicians, etc., etc. But really people forget how it is intimately connected to our lives. That it's actually it's shortchanging us. That at the individual, personal level, it's taking away from us our very own breath sometimes. So if citizens know that corruption is harming them, they'll do something about it, a responsibility too. The second pillar is enhancing the structures for deterrence of corruption. and enforcement through improved compliance with anti-corruption and integrity management obligations, prevention, that is integrity in institutions, state enterprises, the public sector, civil society, everywhere. The
so
third
it's practical as well as, I would say, physical change in individuals. You're looking at both aspects, are you not? Like, how do we change the culture, as well as how do we make sure that corrupt practices stop?
Absolutely, absolutely. And the third pillar is that we don't want citizens to just be aware that corruption robs them, but it aims to increase citizen demand for transparency and accountability. We want in various issues, parastatals, councils, and even churches, and who knows, and wherever else. Jessie? The other pillars are what we're talking about today, the protection of whistleblowers and victims of corruption, as well as the fifth one is the recovery of assets and compensation. We want to move to compensation of people who have suffered from corruption. And the last one is what Priscilla does, increased levels of political parties, transparency, political will, and accountability in the political arena. So there are subcommittees that are co-chaired by the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission and key actors from Zimbabwe who do these things. So the subcommittees are in place. They had their first meetings and they are working out their plans of action.
Okay. Now, just very briefly, the lay bill in place for protection of whistleblowers, where are we? What can we expect to see it, I don't know, in the first quarter of 2021? I mean, when do you expect it to hit Parliament and get approved?
You know, frankly, we were expecting that when the legislative agenda for this the term of Parliament is announced, it will be among that, but we listened out loud, we didn't hear it, so
so this is what you're going to be meeting about.
But may I also just say that we talk about a lay bill, but I was asked by somebody, what is a lay bill? Because I think so that people may also know that it's something that we, at the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission, we want the legislative framework to be improved. So we said that we are not going to stop at just writing a shopping list, a wish list, say, oh, we want whistleblower protection, we want more crimes. We said we want to make it easier and faster for the legislative drafters in government. We are going to go to the extent of actually drafting a proper proposed bill.
Oh, it's not drafted yet?
No, we drafted like a possible bill because we didn't want them to have to start from scratch to translate and to translate our hopes into legislative drafting. We actually, let me say, we spoon-fed them.
Sometimes spoon-feeding is good. All right, Ngobani, I am going to come back to you after the breather. I would like your comment on the Whistleblower Act as well as, of course, the National Anti-Corruption Strategy. We'll have to take a breather now. You're watching this morning International Anti-Corruption Day, Protecting Whistleblowers. This broadcast is brought to you by ZIMBABWE's TV network, ZTN, and our partners, Transparency International Zimbabwe, TIZ. Now, in our final segment, we ask, how can citizens report corruption? Can Zimbabwe actually win the fight against corruption? And what is the way forward to ensure that we do? Don't go away. We will be right back.
Life would never be the same again.
Absolutely. How do you tell someone in Bari or in Soweto that they should exercise social distancing?
Every single one of us, barring a few, are praying more.
What is the health economic cost of that we are trying to achieve?
I don't know whether his chairman knows he runs at about 9 in the morning.
Yeah, I've just got symptoms, so I just called the doctor and I just he just advised me to have to stay at home, eh?
Welcome back, live from ZTN Studios in Harare, Zimbabwe. You're watching International Anti-Corruption Day, Protecting Whistleblowers. This broadcast is brought to you by ZIMBABWE's TV network, ZTN, and our partners, Transparency International Zimbabwe, TIZ. Nobani, before the breather, we touched on on the whistleblower protection, the state of where the bill is, whether it's going to be passed, hopefully as soon as possible. I'd like you to comment on that as TIZ, and also the National Anti-Corruption Strategy. How good is it? Can it be effective if it's implemented correctly?
Okay, thank you. In terms of the Whistleblowers Protection Act, it's very important if we are to effectively respond to corruption in Zimbabwe. Most people are scared of even reporting case of corruption because of so many issues. Firstly, they fear that they could be victimized. They also fear that because there's no guaranteed protection, some might lose their jobs and so forth. Some also feel that the information that they share is not even safe. They can information can be turned
or can be leaked to the people they're reporting against.
Yes.
Right.
So we really need to be hands-on in terms of the Whistleblowers Protection Act. And we need to not only put the act, but also put other frameworks, supporting frameworks to actually support that particular process. And if there are some other case studies that actually indicate that whistleblowing is very much effective. For example, if we take a research by KPMG Africa in 2005, it indicates that over 40% of issues to do with corruption have been through the whistleblowing. So it makes it very important. It actually shows that while it's for us to crack down on the syndicates, organized levels of corruption, we somehow need to protect those that can leak information or can indicate it to the relevant authorities such as ZAC. So that's why we're saying it is very, very important, an important legislation. And over 30 countries have actually made significant progress on this. And I think Zimbabwe should take a similar route. And your next
National Anti-Corruption Strategy.
It's a very, I think it's a landmark for Zimbabwe for the past like 5 to 10 years. That there's been so much advocacy around we need an organized, a coordinated approach to responding to corruption. And ZAC significantly, I think, has actually done well on that particular part. And also calling in other stakeholders. For example, TIZ is one of the co-chairs in one of the subcommittees on community awareness and so forth. Should be
because you do work in lots of communities around the country, don't you?
Yes, and we also participate in some of the committees, such as the one on political will and so. So we are saying the ability to bring various stakeholders, the police, the Minister of Education, and so forth, Minister of Finance, in under the one umbrella to respond to to corruption. Is
very business also involved in these?
Yes, very much. There are, I think there are some banks there. So yes, so they actually that's a very significant landmark for Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission. So we feel that it needs now a proper support, financial support, for example. It needs human resource support. ZAC needs to be well resourced to actually implement the strategy effectively.
Well, I know that, Jesse, you did get, how much was it? Over $4 billion to capacitate yourself. So we'll be watching how ZAC spends that. But let me get to a critical question. Do you think the anti-corruption fight, Jesse, can be won? Can Zimbabwe win it? And here I'm not just talking about public sector, but also what I would term white-collar crime. Can we win?
I'd say definitely yes, Andy. We can get a corrupt-free Zimbabwe. Actually, in a short space of time, it all depends on our will and what we do. We can. And I want to believe that the National Anti-Corruption Strategy has given us a solid footing to start to do that because of its participatory manner and the way it involves sections of the population and keeps focusing on the citizen themselves because, like you say, people who are corrupt don't land from Mars or from some other country. They are with us, and sometimes it is us. We live with them in our houses. We are them. They are our relatives, our friends. It's everywhere, but what's going on? So it's actually possible because they are accessible to us if they are not us. So it is actually possible if we work across all the sectors. And as was said, that if the plan is resourced, the strategy is resourced by people, but also even other resources, and we have support of like the media, like yourselves, that if we talk about it, and because I think earlier on you actually remarked at how there seems to be increasing conversations and public discussions, which wasn't there before, about corruption. It was just the order of the day. But that increasing, making it topical also helps, because we can get to a point where we have zero tolerance if we keep working together across the sectors.
But so let me ask you the same question, because I mean, we daily wake up to media reports of corrupt practices in all spheres, not just in public sector, but in private sector as well. And I think it's that confidence aspect of Zimbabwean citizens to say, are we actually winning the fight against corruption? Are we seeing anything tangible happening? Is the bribery stopping when we get to allegedly at roadblocks and at passport offices and so forth, which have been reported extensively? Can we win, Priscilla?
Well, yes, definitely we can, but it takes a lot. It takes convictions, which is what some of us are pushing in Parliament. We actually need to get the judiciary to run with this. We can't have them carrying on with cases, particularly high-profile cases, going on for 5-6 years. We have to do the asset forfeiture, not only the seizure, but forfeiture. People have to understand that if you get something corruptly, it can be taken away from you. And the citizenry have to see the benefit of the forfeiture coming back into things that matter, into education, into health, into their roads, into water and sanitation. So we have to ensure, as Jesse says, within the context of the strategy, we have to ensure that both, legislative arm, the executive arm, the judiciary, for example, we all have to come together to make sure that people begin to see that things are happening. I think what we're failing now, and I spoke to the Mbingalo syndrome, that when people see a celebration of unexplained wealth, then you have a problem in getting them to it. You aspire to it, which is why the media, yourselves, Andy, are critical in beginning to expose some of these things, allowing conversations to happen, not only at this level, but at grassroots level, so that people understand that it is bad. It is bad to be corrupt, and you can be punished for being corrupt. At the moment, people don't see the punishment that comes with being corrupt.
I think, Ngobani, let's follow that thought, because, I mean, your mandate, one of your core mandates as Transparency International Zimbabwe, of course, is the fight against corruption. And you monitor the corruption. You talked about us going from 22 to 24, which is a very slight improvement, but not good enough. And you heard what Priscilla is saying there. People just don't, they understand we're fighting corruption, but they don't really see it. And even if they do, the high-profile cases, as Priscilla said, take many years. Some are released, or they're on bail, or whatever the issue is through our legal system, which of course is our legal system. Let's not knock that. But the fact is this: it doesn't give hope to the citizens that we can win. So let me put it to you: can we win?
I want to be optimistic and say yes, we can. We need to maybe change a lot of things. First, one of the key things that we need to take into note is how our institutions operate. They need to be independent. They need to be very thorough. They need to be able to build trust, especially to the citizens. That's a very key point. And also, one of the things, maybe as an example, when you talk to the informal traders, you ask them, why do you engage in corruption? They say, because it's the situation. And besides, others at the top are doing it. So those small perceptions, they might be small, but they actually are indicative that...
so if you're doing it, then I can do it.
Yes.
And you don't get caught, so I won't get caught.
Yes. So then it actually makes... It means that those institutions, for example, ZAC, police, the NGOs, and even the parliament, they've got a bigger role to play in changing perceptions, changing cultures, which is a very, very mammoth task.
It's a mammoth task, it is. But you're right, that trust, that perception issue is a deficit in Zimbabwe, and I think that's very clear, and I think all of you have said that. Now, we are coming to the end of our program, so Commissioner, I think it's important, though, in terms of giving contact details, because ZAC has various ways and means that members of the public can report on corruption. Maybe you could just, for us now, just give us some of those, your website, or if there's any whistleblower apps or anything that's available. How do people report to you?
Thank you, Andy. We have got an array of platforms that people can report, and because our theme is whistleblow, we are hoping to hear and see whistleblowing on our platforms. And we have toll-free numbers that we have. I'll start with those so that the toll-free numbers that are available. We have a Net 1 number that is toll-free. That is 080 1010. That is 1010, yes. And then we've also got we've also got now opened a WhatsApp number that we can use to report corruption, and it is operated on. Sorry, I'll just get that. But sorry,
but also as well on your website. Correct? What's your website?
ZAC.zim.
ZAC.zim. And if you go to that website, all of this information, WhatsApp, how you can report in terms of Tel 1, you said 080-110,
yes,
if I remember correctly.
And if I can say, yes, the please. WhatsApp number is 0719 529 483.
Can maybe repeat that?
0719 529 483.
Okay, perfect. That's
and you can get us on Facebook, facebook.com/ZACZIM, or you can also get us on Twitter at ZAC online.
All right, brilliant. So and the number there, WhatsApp 0719 529 483. So there's another. You got lots of avenues.
Yes, but we have a WhatsApp. Sorry, it's an app, whistleblowing app that you can use, and it will keep your anonymity guaranteed. ZAC.online/tip-offs.
Perfect. ZAC.online/tip-offs. Brilliant. Thank you. Now we are coming, so I can only give you very briefly to answer this. What is the way forward? How can we go forward effectively and fight corruption? Let me start with you, Priscilla, very briefly.
Implement the strategy, get everybody on board, make sure that people know that corruption you can be punished for it, not reward. Make sure that those that have committed crimes are convicted expeditiously.
Oh, there we go. Ngobani.
We need to be united against corruption, all as stakeholders, citizens as well. We need to report all forms of corruption using the necessary platforms that are already there. Thank you.
Jessie?
I'd say please whistleblow to us, even like the NGO. I want to appeal to the NGO sector, especially to whistleblow the corruption in them, and not just deal with it and dismiss people quietly. And everybody else, please whistleblow to us. We'll keep the confidentiality. And also, if you have people out there who you know, because that you know are getting away with it, let us know so that we won't have, this perception that there's only certain people are arrested. Please bring information to us that we can follow up with leads, and we'll also push the legislative changes and together.
So there you have it, various channels. Let me try and repeat some of these. The whistleblower app, which is important, ZAC.online/tip-offs. Tip-offs, and of course the number WhatsApp 0719 529 483. We have come to the end of our program this morning, and a very vital discussion we've had, because we're talking about corruption, and we must remember corruption affects both you and me. I'd like to thank our panelists, Commissioner Jessie Majome from the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission, ZAC, Ngobani Shabangu, Research Officer from Transparency International Zimbabwe, TIZ, Priscilla Misiarabwi Mushonga, Chairperson of Zimbabwe's Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Primary and Secondary Education, and Chairperson of UNUPNAC Zimbabwe. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for appearing on the program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You have been watching International Anti-Corruption Day, Protecting Whistleblowers. This broadcast is brought to you by ZimPaper's TV network, ZTN, and our partners. Transparency International, Zimbabwe, TIZ. Well, it's clear that corruption does affect all levels of society, and whistleblowing protection is critical, and hopefully we'll see, as our guests have said, in the next quarter, hopefully we will have a Whistleblower Protection Act on our statutes. But anyway, corruption is bad for everybody, as I've said. That's it for today. Thank you very much. Have a pleasant day. I'm Andy Hodges. Goodbye, and you all be safe.